Sorry, so we can get the, yeah, no, I thought you were trying to hide the controls again. Look at me being a classic older sibling.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our first real in-person only workshop. This is the first one that's not online or not hybrid at all. We are recording it just so you guys can of course watch it afterward. If you want to listen to their lovely voices beyond today, beyond the workshop. So you are able to watch this again, and of course you all have the sheets in front of you, so if you want to take notes throughout the presentation, you're more than welcome to do so. If you don't know who I am Brianna Rossa, the Office and Events Coordinator for the Small Business Center. So we host workshops like this on a regular basis, whether they're in person, online, or we have the hybrid option as well. So thank you everyone for coming today. Before we get started here, I'm actually going to have Chantel say a few words on behalf of Transal.
Put me on the spot much, okay.
You knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. So if you don't know already, my name is Chantal Willette. I am the Administrative and Communications Assistant at Trendbell. So Trendbell is a not-for-profit. We are federally funded. We offer businesses various resources, including business financing and business counseling. So we offer financing up to $300,000. So if you guys have any more questions regarding that, please feel free to speak to me after. Thank you for Brianna for putting this event together, and thank you, Katie and Kate, for coming and hosting it. Thank you.
And of course, just a few ground rules, since we're now back in person. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, just raise your hand, like back in the classroom style, when we're actually in person again. So just raise your hand, and Katie and Kate, they will answer your questions throughout the workshop. And of course, at the very end, you will have a chance to ask more questions at the very end. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Katie and Kay, just make sure I don't mess up the Katie and Kay. And they are from Babes of Quinte. They have their own podcast, and they're two co-hosts. If you haven't listened to their podcast, I would definitely suggest to listen to it. I've been kind of binge listening for the last couple of weeks, and I've kind of became addicted.
So we're looking for folks.
And they actually also work at Starboard Communications. I believe Kay is the marketing director.
Yeah.
So
Talk about it.
We talk
Yeah.
about it, yeah. And then also too, Katie works within the marketing department as well within the Starboard Communications. And I will now pass it over to Deb.
Thank you.
And you guys can take it away.
Hi. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to the Small Business Center for having us. We're super nervous and excited.
Yeah, so I'm definitely feeling like I'm gonna throw up right now, so like, it's fine, but like, you know.
Feeling good, okay. Didn't work out. Okay, we'll do this thing. Yeah.
I turned off the mouse because you said you didn't like the mouse.
This isn't.
The keyboard's not
okay.
working.
That's okay. Oh, there we go.
We got now your stuff.
Okay, hi, I'm Kay. I moved to the Bay of Quinte about 13 years ago. I'm a mom of two human children, 14 and 3, which is poor choice on my part, but I like my children. I also have 2 cats. I am hopelessly addicted to chai tea. It's kind of like my crutch, pretty much my personality at this point. That's what's in my cup. And I'm the digital media manager at Starboard Communications. So it's 95.5 Hits FM, Cool 100, in Quinte.ca, the Market Charity Podcast, Christmas in Quinte, Shopping Quinte, or no, I'm not yet, sorry. Take that back. Take it back. And what else do we have? Starboard Cares. Yeah, so I kind of handle a lot of the digital stuff. So websites, graphics, printed materials, content.
I'm Katie. I am a dog mom of 2. Daisy is my sweet baby angel. Frank is my 3-legged devil. We're working on it.
I love making PowerPoints and sending e-blast, my vibe. I'm the digital media coordinator, which kind of went as assistant. And I've also recently started doing, I'm a junior sales assistant at the station as well.
Okay, so we basically, I was like, with my job, a good chunk of it pre-COVID was sitting in one of the studios with my boss, Paul Ferguson, while he interviewed artists and, you know, just people in the community. And I love like hearing people's stories, like where they started, how they got to where they're going, because you can always see like on like social media and stuff, if like everything looks like glossy and pretty, but you don't see all the hard work that goes in beforehand. So I just got like really inspired by like storytelling aspect of interviewing, because a lot of the stuff that was talked about in these interviews with my boss didn't make it to air. Like there was always longer conversations. So I was like, hey, like, how can I do this? And how can I, you know, amplify some voices in where we live? Because realistically, I'm not gonna be formally interviewing like musical artists. Like no one cares to hear about me talking about musical artists, but I was like, hey, you know what, like maybe we can do this locally. I'm like, we have a pretty big Rolodex of clients. I'm like, I'm sure somebody will talk to us, like it's gonna be fine. But yeah, so I pitched the idea to Paul and the owner of our company, John, and they were like, hey, yeah, that could work. And John was like, Katie has a similar idea, you should talk to her. And I was like, okay. So,
And so I was working as a planning consultant, at a planning company in Muskoka, and I hated it dearly. So I was kind of lost in between careers at the moment, and I'd worked at Starboard before. So I made the decision to come back. And I'd always thought about having a podcast because I worked at Starboard. I knew there was microphones accessible to me. And I came up with an idea for a podcast that was called Do You Like That? And I would talk to people about their career journey and how they got to where they were. Because I wanted to know people struggled as much as I did trying to figure out what to do with their life. But then Kay had the name Babes of Quinte, but we really just had the same idea of trying to talk to local people about how they started and where they came from. And Babes of Quinte was kind of bored, and this is like our actual conversation on Facebook Messenger. How it started.
yeah, so I had messaged Katie, I was like, so like, here's what happened.
And then,
Yeah, we're just kind of like history.
and we refer to the owner of the company and our manager as the two bald men, because they're both bald, so if we say that, that's who we're talking about. So I'm just gonna talk a bit about statistics and analytics, because I kind of nerd out about it. So this just gives you an idea of what's going on with podcasting right now. So podcast listening is going up. So a media technology survey shows that 1/3 of Canadians claim to have listened to podcasts in the last month. And on average, people are listening to 4 hours a week. Overarchingly, half of Canadians say they've listened to podcasts, like within their lifetime. The listener profile reflects a young, well-educated, diverse, and affluent audience. And podcasts provide a unique opportunity to hit a market that isn't usually hit with advertising and content through traditional media sources, which is the 18 to 34-year-old range. Ads in podcasts are also less likely to be skipped, and that's just under AM/FM radio. And then 74% of people listen to podcasts to learn new things, while other people listen for regular entertainment, to stay up to date, to relax, and for inspiration. A fact that kind of blew my mind was it's estimated the podcast market will grow to $4 billion by the year 2024. So it is really up and coming, and I'm sure hopefully you've all listened to a podcast. So now we're gonna get into the hardware. So if you do want to start a podcast, you probably already have what you need to do a basic podcast. Your phone and computer has a microphone built into it, and you can record on a voice memo or a recording app, and that'll give you a simple MP3 file that you can then upload on a platform distribution, which Kay will talk about later, or to each site individually. If you want a bit of a better audio quality, you can get a mic. So I just brought, this is a Yeti. It's a very reasonable price mic. It's about $150 to $200. You can plug it. It's a USB. So you plug it right into your computer. You do need headphones though as well, just so you're not getting like feedback into the mic from other things. You can also just get an adapter so it can plug right into your phone. This gives you just a bit of a crisper sound when you're recording, and it'll pick up the sound better. We also brought, this is just like a little lapel mic that Kay got on Amazon for like $14. It also, again, will just pick you up a little bit easier. Another thing to think about when you're going to record a podcast is where you're recording. So for instance, this room's really big, there's a lot of like echo and it's not gonna absorb that sound. My partner wanted me to make a joke about going back into the closet because the closet is a really great place to record a podcast. If it's big enough, you can like that the clothing and everything in there is really gonna like muffle any outside sound. A car has really great acoustics. There's actually podcasts where they're just driving in cars and recording, and you're getting a really good sound quality. We're really fortunate because we work in a radio station that we're able to use the station recording studio and everything they have. Another thing you could invest in is an audio mixer. This works really well if you're doing an interview podcast or a podcast with more people, because you're able to change the levels of talkers. So when we have guests that are soft spoken, I can up their levels and reduce our levels because we're kind of like louder speakers. And that just means that when we go to edit it, there'll be less level changing that we have to do in post-production. Another thing is if you want to do,
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you say audio mixer, does it automatically kind of level everything out for you?
no,
Or is it something that you can do after the fact or during?
you're doing it during, so it's like a board with a bunch of like levels and knobs.
Oh,
Can
gosh.
you picture that? So you have one of those and each mic is plugged into a separate channel, and then you can change the levels of each
And then-
microphone as you're going. And this just means that when you go to edit later, you don't have to change those volumes within.
So it's all done prior to.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a little bit easier. That you can get an audio mixer microphone like combo on Amazon. I don't know a lot about them. You'd have to like do a little more research, but they range from, $150 to $1,000 depending on what you're trying to do. And they all have different channels, which means that's how many mics you can plug into the mixer. A camera and webcam is also great. A lot of people will record video of their podcast and then upload it to YouTube or socials later. We haven't done that yet because we don't have time to edit it.
We also have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So.
Software. So I'm gonna talk from a Adobe Audition standpoint, which is a paid program. And again, we are able to access that through the radio station. But all it is it's a audio recording and editing software. There are free versions, so I'll list some of those as well that you could use. I talked about this a little bit. So what we do is when we're recording into mics that's going into a mixing board and then into Audition on a computer. So we're recording into that software. So it picks up a waveform, and then later we take that audio and you can move it into what's called a multi-track, which means you can layer audio on top of each other. So that's how we put the music underneath our voices when we're talking. So that's one benefit of using a audio editing software. I'll also go in and take out sounds that drive me insane, like breath sounds, or sometimes people have very moist sounds when they're talking. So there's like clicking sounds. And the problem is we work in a radio station where we're surrounded by on-airs that are very attuned to hearing certain things. And so that has kind of affected my ears because I've had years of people saying like, there's a hum or there's a buzz or so. We take out breath sound, we take out our crutch words like and like, as I just said it. And if there's like a bang, like if someone just like is a tapper when they talk, the mic will pick that up. I yell at her a lot, I'll be like, because then you have to go in and take it out, and you can take it out, but then sometimes it hollows out your audio. I'm by no means a sound engineer. I learned all this on YouTube. And you can do it too. That's the best part. You can learn this on YouTube. You can use a virtual meeting platform. So Zoom, for instance, you can record through Zoom, video and audio. We don't love it because we find the audio gets a little bit distorted. You can also use Riverside, which Jenny uses for her Simple Talk podcast. It works really well. She loves it. You love it?
I love it.
We tried it.
Quality is really good too.
The audio quality is good. The video quality is good. We tried to use it to interview like 6 people for an hour and a half, and some of the audio didn't get uploaded, so we have trust issues with it now. But if you're doing a shorter, maybe 2 or 3 people, I think it can be really beneficial, because your video quality and audio sound really good, and you don't use a mic, right? Yeah, so that's a really good option. And then Loopback is a digital mixer that you can use on Macs. So when you record on Zoom, it'll record to your Zoom cloud or directly to your desktop, but it won't record into an audio software. Loopback means you can have a mixer without actually having a physical mixer. You can connect your mic to a digital mixer to your audio, to your audition, or yes.
And that's just for Mac. Is
I'm-
there a,
I haven't been able to find a Windows one that I trust downloading yet. So yeah, unfortunately, it's just for Mac, but there has to be alternatives out there. This one was also free, so I'm sure they're paid, trustable versions. Loopback, you can do 20 minutes for free, and then you have to start paying, so it's a good possibility.
Yeah, so something most people don't think about is like, you need to have a graphic design software, whether it be Adobe Photoshop, which is what I use at work, or Canva, which I also use at work. They're both really great resources for very different reasons. What this will do is help kind of brand you and help, make social assets for your audio pieces, for lack of better words. So what we do with our podcast, we'll record a whole episode, and then Katie will send me like a 1-minute snippet of the episode, kind of as like a preview. And with the graphic design software, I can like create a kind of preview image of what, who was on the podcast, what episode it is, and just kind of like layer that in a waveform on top of that to have like a static image and audio in one, because Instagram likes videos. So make a reel. I want to make reels. But that's where the motion design software comes into. So I use Adobe After Effects, which is paid, but you can also use a web-based platform called Headliner. And what that will do is you can just upload your photo, upload your audio, and then it will make kind of like one of those little loopy waveforms for you, which is really cool. So I think you are limited to like 5 a month, which, I mean, if you're putting out a
That are
weekly episode.
On
or-
watermark.
Yeah, unwatermarked. And then if you want more than 5, then there's just a watermark on it, which realistically is not the end of the world. Especially when you're just starting out,
Yeah.
so.
I also, things I do, because I don't have After Effects, I'll take it, then I make it, and then I upload it to Canva, and then I just match the color background, download it, boom, no. But don't tell them I did that. Don't tell them. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, so distribution platforms, this is pretty important. So what this is gonna do is it's kind of like an online hub where you can upload your podcast episodes, and then it just gets automatically distributed to Apple Music, to Spotify, Amazon,
Play.
Google Play, iHeart Podcasts. Like any of these podcast platforms, they have a list of all the ones. You just link your accounts up to it, and then when you upload your audio, it just goes to everything. And it's usually pretty quick. Like I upload Mark and Charity's podcast every morning by like 11, and by like 11:15, there's a notification on my phone being like, there is a new episode. So it's very helpful for that. It saves a ton of time. It gives you analytics, so you can kind of know like the amount of people who are downloading your episode, the amount of people who are, listening, who they are, but we'll get into kind of that a bit later. What it also does, more importantly, is these podcast distribution platforms are like literally built to be able to handle large media files. So you can realistically upload your podcast to a website and be totally fine, but if you put out a new episode, you post your socials, and then a whole bunch of people go to download your episode all at the same time, your website hosting platform may be like, oh, that looks suspicious, and just like block it. Or you'll have site issues where your download speeds will be slower. A page just might keep erroring out. It might completely wipe your website because they just block you because too much traffic all at once, too many resources. The ISPs just are not the ISP. The website host is just like, no, we're not doing this. So you kind of want to avoid that. So that's why I recommend using a distribution platform. There's lots of options out there. We use this one called Podbean. You get a certain amount of time for free. With your, so you get like a certain amount of storage. So like if you have a shorter podcast, you probably upload like more episodes, but if you have a long podcast, I think it's like 2 to 3, generally speaking, episodes that you can get for free. After that, it's like $9 a month. So, and then if you have more podcasts, it gets cheaper. So, well, not cheaper, but like you're gonna save. So we have 3 right now, and it's like, I don't know, whatever.
Not that much. I think
It's
it's like
not-
30 or 40.
Yeah, it's like 30 or 40 bucks. It's super cheap. And it's unlimited storage, which is A plus. There's also ones called Buzzsprout, Blueberry, and Transistor. I just recommend Podbean because it's just the easiest platform for me.
Jenny, what do you use?
I use Buzzsprout, and they also have an audio equalizer in there.
Oh, beautiful.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's great. All right.
Anchor FM is free.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah, that's the one through WordPress. Maybe. I don't know, but
It's
if
on
you
the website.
if you have a WordPress website, Anchor FM is kind of like a plugin thing that you can plug right into your website to make things even a little bit easier. Yeah. Yes. Building your brand. This is literally my favorite part because I went to school at Loyalist for advertising and marketing and
We
branding.
built our brand. I don't want you guys to think I had anything to do with it. This is Oliver, okay? So.
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so I don't know if any of you have or have not listened, we just put out an episode yesterday with Nomad Creative. And your brand is more than just your logo. You know, it's everything about, it's your whole vibe, it's colors, it's text, it's how you make people feel. It's everything. So where am I going with this? I have no idea. So it's probably one of your most important marketing tools because if you see, like, if I see like the McDonald's ad, I know immediately who I'm looking at, or the Tiffany blue, for example. It doesn't even have to have a logo on it. If I see Tiffany blue, even if it's not a Tiffany thing, see Tiffany blue, I'm just like, oh, hey, that's Tiffany blue. So that's like A plus, like top tier marketing, where you can just have a color evoke your entire brand. So when I'm starting to build out a brand, what I do is I create kind of mood boards. So I'll go on something like Pinterest and kind of just start, like, I'll just type out like typography. And I'll get a bunch of just different pictures and stuff, and I'll just start throwing them all into like a mood board, Pinterest board. And then I'll go back, I'll be like color palettes. And then I start just like throwing color palettes into this board. And then, you know, just like photography, I'll be like, okay, like I love like the tones of this photo, or I love, you know, like just kind of like the airy feel of this one. And then by the end of it, usually I go back and there's kind of like an underlying theme to all of like my pins. With this one, it was kind of like a 70s kind of like retro-y feel, but like still kind of cool. I tried to use like colors that were kind of trending, but still timeless. And then just the fun bubbly letters, because we're kind of fun and bubbly and
Try. I think she originally made about 3, 4 logo
Yeah.
options and sent them to me, and then we like. were like,
Mishmashed.
no, yes, no.
it's
yes,
a
and-
process, right?
Yeah.
Like it's never, it's, yeah, you never get on your first try, like, you know, you're always gonna be kind of building your brand. So yeah, type is super important. So when I say type, I mean like your font. With that, you also want to make sure you have, if you're using a font you downloaded from the internet, you need to make sure you have the proper licensing. Because you can get sued by people who make these fonts, because it is a rigorous process to actually build out a font that looks nice. And if you're just kind of stealing their hard work, it's just not, if you want to be paid, you have to pay them. So we have a subscription through Adobe. So with our Adobe subscription, we get access to X amount of fonts. I bought fonts, I bought this font and I customized it for our brand. So there's certain parts of it that are like for that, like that's just typing it out. But like for our logo, like there was parts that I kind of finessed through
Our logo.
Oh, it's there. There's parts I kind of changed to make it what I wanted. Exactly, but. Like, the type that you choose is so important to your brand because. Like, it's everywhere. It's like, it's who you are, and if you want to evoke an emotion. So if you pick like kind of like very like clean, like serifed font. Sorry, I'm confusing.
I love fonts.
So a serif is, you know, when you're looking at fonts like Times New Roman, it has like those little tails. So that like a lot of the time, those kinds of fonts look a little bit more elegant or elevated or, you know, a little bit more bougie. Or you can get like a bubbly fun font. which
We're more fun than Times New Roman.
I do not recommend it ever using Times New Roman, period, or Comic Sans, or Papyrus. Anyway,
So Ariel's fine.
no,
Shut down. I think one thing too is our brand. It kind of it hasn't changed, but we've elevated
Yeah.
things, so
It evolved.
the sticker I handed out, that was our original logo. And it's still the logo, but now we go more with a monotone, so we have that in all our different
colors.
colors.
So it's like, that's still who we are, but we're also evolving, like, if you scroll our Instagram feed too, like, you'll see we started out using like kind of like swirls or stars, but I'm just kind of like, you know what, less is more sometimes,
She also informed me when our brand is changing, so we said no more swirls,
no more stars.
no more stars, so.
Which are still fun, but
But
I mean, just not all the time, and it's a lot. And, yeah.
Good.
We're good.
Choose your niche. This is the fun part, guys. Hopefully, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, you've kind of already started to think about this. So this is the different kinds of podcasts. Everywhere I looked, there's some say there's 4 types, some say there's 7 types. This was the 8 I really found a lot. So first, ours is an interview podcast. So that's when you have a host and a co-host and you're interviewing a guest. There's a monologue podcast. That's one host. They're usually very educated on a topic and it's just them and it's more scripted. This is what many beginners will use. Again, you don't need as much hardware for this because you're just one person. A conversational podcast is similar to a traditional radio show. So if you ever listen to the Market Charity Coffee podcast, that's a conversational podcast. A roundtable or panel podcast is a group of hosts and it'll always be the same host and they'll talk about different topics each podcast. Storytelling podcast is a real life story and requires research. And then theater podcast is like a fun fictional story. A repurposed content is taking existing content and transforming it. So that's like my favorite murder, a lot of true crime podcasts. And then a hybrid podcast is mixing and matching any of these together. So we knew we were going to be an interview podcast. It was going to be co-host talking to guests. So once we knew this, I'll say our timeline. So I knew I was coming back in April and that's when we kind of decided. And we didn't record our first episode until June. So we had a couple months to figure out how like our branding and then also how we were going to lay out our episodes. And let me tell you, we were so nervous to get in front of a mic for the first time in a studio. It was very intimidating. Luckily, we had Emily from 955 Hits FM, who's also our friend. She was our first guest and she like ran the board for us and everything. But so I researched a bunch of interview podcasts and templates, and I find that's a good place to start. So once you know what kinds of podcasts you want to do, you can research how different podcasts will lay that out. So we knew we were going to have an intro, a potential ad spot, interview our guests, and then have an extra, and then we may run a mid-roll ad. And we still follow that template to this day. Each podcast can be made its own. So that's also how you're making your brand is through what kind of podcast you have. And for instance, when we were starting to build our template, we started looking at music. So we have access to a program called DWolf that is just music production. It's instrumental music, voice music, and we found a sound we liked is called Island Vibe. And that's the sound that is our intro, our extra, and then there's little stings you can download. So we always have that before our guest starts and ends. So you kind of also want to pick music that is going to be within your brand as well. So maybe when people hear it, they think of you. Does anyone have any questions about the types of podcasts?
The Internet of Things. It is also what I get really excited about.
Also her, not me. I get excited, but this is your baby.
Katie makes reels way better than I do. Okay, so my biggest piece of advice is choosing social networks carefully. You want to choose social networks that you're going to actually use. So like, yeah, is it important to have, you know, yourself across like all of them? Sure, but if they're not being used, you look, it's unprofessional, you look unreliable, people won't trust. If I go to a Twitter account and the last tweet was like 3 months ago, like I immediately lose a little bit of trust in that brand. So to avoid that, you just don't do it. And that's okay, like you don't have to spread yourself out over everything, do what you can manage and do it well. Like if you're gonna thrive on Instagram, great. If you're gonna thrive with Facebook, which is, you can do that too, but. I'm just thinking of my next thing, I'm just like, oh yeah, and you can like manage Facebook and Instagram through Business Suite, which makes things super easy. Schedule your content, you can see all of your analytics, you can, you know, make sure that everything's kind of going smoothly, you can put messages, comments, all of it just right through Business Suite. So if you're doing anything, I recommend those two. We also upload all of our episodes to YouTube because sometimes people do not know how to use podcasts.
The bald man.
Okay, so like my mother, for example, love her dearly, does not understand how to use like Apple Podcasts. Like it's just beyond her capability. Even if I install it and subscribe her to our podcast, she's just like, I don't want this. So I just send her a YouTube link. So that way you can kind of still hit all the demographics and you're just more accessible to everybody. So for us, the majority of our listeners and downloads and stuff come from apps because our audience is a little bit younger. But with Mark and Charity's podcast, a good chunk of their like listening hours come from YouTube. They do have obviously people on the apps, but like, yeah, like 80% of their listening time is coming from YouTube, which I thought was really cool. Okay, so another thing, everything's content. Literally everything. If you think it's boring and like mundane, I promise you it's content. If you're going to a networking event, content, it's great content. Tag the people you're with. If you're, you know, like we've been to the Queen Women in Business kind of like networking events. And, you know, like you meet people, you just follow them on their socials, you know, like their stuff, comment on their things, like start to build that community through your social networks. So like, even if someone's commenting, be like, oh, that's cool, like respond, be like, thanks. Or like, you know, hype up other local businesses that you will find with. And I find that's been probably one of the biggest like ways we've grown.
We also have found a lot of our guests through Instagram, like people we've never met in person.
Yeah.
And we're just like, hey, want to be on the pod, or that's how we're talking, and then bam, meet them in person. Which is also weird, but great.
Yeah, so I mean, literally everything, if you're walking your dogs at lunch hour,
Content.
perfect. It also adds to your listener experience. So yeah, they're not listening to your podcast, but they feel like they're still like part of your process and your journey, your life, like all these things. So you're kind of it's part of your brand, right? So like you just want people to feel involved. And I mean, everybody likes feeling like they're in the behind the scenes kind of things, right? So I know I do. So also lose your shame.
Yeah.
When you start, it feels weird and it feels gross. When we started podcasting, Jeanette's partner said that I always sounded like I was gonna cry. I probably do that now because I'm really nervous. But like, you know, eventually it gets easier and things will, like, you're not gonna be perfect the first time you do it. It's fine, like
Our
nobody is.
first couple of, there's some episodes I can't listen to.
No.
One, because it's cringy the things we say, and like even the audio quality is different. So you build as you go, which is
Yeah.
really nice.
And you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, and really lose your shame. Like I talked about selling feed pictures on our podcast, and I have no shame about it. It was Jenny's episode. Have a listen.
Good episode. It was good.
It was a really fun episode.
I laughed a lot.
Okay.
Do you need a website? Do you need air to breathe? Is water wet? Yes, you need a website. Everybody needs a website, even if it's like the most basic one-page website, it helps so much because the search engines are optimizing, like, they're scrolling through the internet. They're like, oh, hey, that's great. We're gonna put that when people search, you know, Bay of Quinte podcast. I really hope that we show up. We do check.
Your website or your podcast?
I don't care either one.
But our Instagram
So-
comes up first.
So, yeah, I think it's your Instagram that comes up first, and then like several different podcast sites.
Yeah.
I have to scroll down to get to your website.
Yeah,
Okay, that's because it's new.
yeah.
And I haven't completely finished the SEO of it, but you know what? We're getting there, baby steps. So what websites do, they build credibility. They're going to showcase your brand. So this is just like kind of like a hub where you can have, you know, all of your branding things that you worked so hard on, your colors, your font, your type, your photos, links to your socials so people can find you, links to where people can listen to you. It's kind of just like the hub. It's also a massive time saver for customer service. Less so for podcasting, more so for businessy type things. You know, if you have a business, you can put your operating hours, saves people from having to call you and be like, when are you open? So with ours, we have like a contact page, so people can submit questions, you know, guest interview requests, anything just right through there. People find, you know, basically all you need to know about us is all there. We have a section about sponsoring our podcast, so if anyone's like, you know, interested or thinking about, you know, advertising their business, you know, there's kind of like a brief rundown on our website, and it kind of saves us time from having to like, if they want more information, they'll get in touch. So the other thing that is incredibly important is tracking your analytics. At the end of every month, what I do is I will go through all of our digital content. So our social networks, our websites, each of our episodes, like all of the things, and make sure I collect as much of the number parts as possible. So what that does is I'm gonna collect page views, you're gonna collect your social engagement, your reach from either socials, websites, whatever it may be. The amount of downloads you've gotten on your episodes, how long people have been listening to your podcast. So if you have through Podbean, you can see where people stop listening and where they pick up. So you can kind of like one episode, you can see where they skip all of our intro just to get to the guests, which is hilarious. But I mean, it was more of like one of those,
It was a really informative about a business.
yeah, so like I get it, it's fine, I'm not offended by it. So what you can do is at the end, yes,
Just a quick question with Podbean, like, does it, if you've got it on Apple Music, Spotify, is it showing you like which platform, like you got this many downloads on Apple Music, this many on Spotify? And it shows you each individual one?
yeah, and then even through that, you can still log into like, there's like Apple and Spotify and all that, they have their own kind of dashboards.
Yeah.
So if you want more in-depth analytics, you can just log into your, you know, podcasters, Spotify account, and you can see more in-depth stuff about, because that, they'll break down the audience of that even further.
Yeah, you can see what your audience is interested in and like different things
Yeah,
like
like
that.
Spotify, we can see the top artists that they listen to,
Yeah.
music wise, as well as our podcast, which is really cool. So like, I think our top artists like Taylor Swift.
We also used our analytics to build our ad packages because we figured out when people are like more dropping off. So the higher sponsorship package, like you get a pre-roll and within the 25 minutes because more people are listening at that time. And then the less expensive one, you're getting a post roll because more people drop off by that time.
Yeah.
So it does help with that as well.
Yeah, so basically, every month you can kind of see your growth or, you know, where you need to improve. So it's one of those tracking metrics that people don't necessarily think about, but it's kind of motivating once you see that number kind of start going up. You know, it gives you the good feels. It's like, okay, like I can still do this. Because, you know, sometimes things are hard and you don't want to. And it's like, oh, why am I even doing this? But then it's like, oh yeah, like our Instagram reach last month went up 300%.
Yeah, it's,
And I'm
like,
just kind of like, oh shit.
I think when we first started, I would get like adrenaline from checking Podbean. I'd be like, how many downloads do we have? Checked it every day. Like, multiple
Yeah, I
times.
remember when we got like our first 1,000 downloads. He's like, we got to 1,000. I was like,
Yeah.
anyways, it felt really good. So what this is going to segue into, love this segue, is monetization. So we all like money. I know I like money. I love making money. I love being able to create something that I am passionate about and make money on it. So what the analytics are gonna do for you is they're kind of gonna give you an overall idea of who your audience is. So our audience specifically skews a little bit younger, so I'm not gonna be like, oh, hey, client who, works, has a retirement. Like, you are not gonna be the most ideal client for me because your target audience and my target audience are completely different. So you just want to make sure you're aligning yourself with brands that, you have kind of like the same audience, so you can piggyback off of each other, because they're gonna have their brand and their kind of like community online or, out actual community. And then we're gonna have ours. So to be able to mesh those with your advertisers that's the way to success, basically. There's no wrong way really to monetize. If you want to add money to anything, you can pretty much do it.
Yeah, so we actually, a lot of podcasts, we made merch, which goes with our branding. We worked with Northern Craft Supply to create sweaters and hats, and then hopefully t-shirts in the summer. And that's also a way to get your brand and your logo out there, and you're making money off of it. Another thing is we had our first event on Monday. We did a virtual, Johnny was there, we did a virtual bingo, and it was just a kicking off point for hopefully having more live recordings and events in the future. It also allows you to partner with different businesses and give them another way to get involved in the podcast. Another thing is, from a podcast standpoint, it's more attainable for businesses because it's not as high of a price tag for ads as, say, like digital or radio, but sometimes.
Or print.
Or print, yeah, so the other thing is it doesn't have to be a traditional radio-esque ad, so we do that because we have, we read our ads and then I put music under, and then you'll really know it's there in our episodes. But if you have more of a monologue podcast, you can just like read it right into your podcast. You don't have to like produce another element. So there's so many unique ways to make money. Yes.
You guys are probably in a unique situation to most of us in this room because you work at a marketing company. Like, how'd you get did you do ads right from the get-go, and how did you get them?
So we would do like, we created a thing at our office called Good News and Quincy, and we put them in our podcast as a sponsor.
Did they sponsor it?
No. But we build it. I send these blasts, so I want people to do it. But then we started just saying, like, in the podcast, we were looking for advertisers. And then after we had Jenny's episode where I talked about selling feet pictures, we used that as like a jumping point to try and get ads. And we made just an Instagram post being like, we're looking for sponsors, and at the bottom it just says like, sponsor us so we don't have to sell our feet pictures. And that really like got people kind of coming to us. Some have been people we've had on the podcast, and it's honestly just people who want to support us right now.
And it's kind of ranged from like, big businesses, like right now, like
It's Hillside House right now, which is a
Yeah.
tattoo.
So with Family Dental Center,
Yeah.
who is our sponsor last month, we had Dr. Yasmin on the podcast. And then we made the feet picture post, and then then she reached out to us and she's like, hey, like, can we sponsor you? And we're like, yes,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
love that.
So like, it's not even necessary, like, they kind of reached out to us, being like, hey, yes, we want to do this. For this month, our sponsor is Hillside House Tattoo. Mary Hoban's a tattoo artist. And she sponsored us without actually knowing what she was
She
doing.
just wanted to give us money, which we love.
Yeah, she was like, I just want to support you because we really love what you're doing. And I was like, oh, great, well, you get ads. She's like, oh,
Yeah, and then we have a personal trainer next month, and she's just like newer starting out, and I think the price point was just right, and we kind of have the right market for her, so that's great. We also, so with our advertising package, you get an Instagram post, you get 4 weeks of 2 ads in each episode. You're on our website and you'll be in our stories.
Yeah.
Another thing is we just restructured how we're doing things, because how we had it was really, you could only have like one sponsor an episode. So now we have BFFs, which is like a primary sponsor, and then we have Friends with Benefits, which is just like, sponsors, but they have different price points, and the BFF is a longer period, so it's like you get more for your buck, and then, so we had to use the analytics, talk to the two bald men and figure out, what would work for us, and we're new to podcasting, we don't know that much about how the ads work, and we're talking to radio people about it, so they admit, like, we don't know how podcast ads work, so it's really figuring out as we go. You can also use your platform distribution, right in there, there's ways to monetize your podcast, and they can give you ads.
Yeah, so you can sign up for, like, Podbean has like a whole ad network. So once you start hitting like a certain threshold of downloads, streams, and all these things, they can automatically drop ads into your podcast for you. We don't do that just because we're just such a local podcast that, you know, having an ad for something completely out of the box makes no sense to me. The other thing about monetization is only align yourself with brands that you personally trust. Like, I would never align myself with something like FitFab, because like,
No MLMs, you know.
yeah, don't even get me started on MLMs, but like, you know, you want to make sure that it's a brand you trust, it's like someone, you know, that you're not gonna feel like gross about talking about them, like you want to be able, because you want to feel authentic, right? So like, even with Family Dental Center, like, I started being a client with them. And every time I go, I'm just kind of like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
and I feel good about them, and like, even Hillside House, like, I got a tattoo on Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
Like, so it's like,
you wanna like your.
you wanna like your sponsors. Yes,
So I have another question there, like, you talking about different price points, like. Where'd you start? I think I know
Okay,
it's different,
so-
like, I feel like for us, I would have no idea where to.
There is like. There's a price per download, like you can go online and they have this price per download. If we were using that, it'd be really low, but because we're hyper localized, we kind of. And we're offering more than just an ad in our episode. What I do is I'm like, hey, you get this many downloads. Usually you get this, and then we somewhat use it like. How we sell radio, and we made a budget, so right now we do $65 a week for the high priced one. And that gets you the two, so you'll get 8 ads total a month. You'll get an Instagram post a month, you'll get a story a week, and you'll get logos on our website. And that means you're hitting also our most listeners, like you're getting a pre-roll and a mid-roll. And honestly, it was just talking out prices and figuring out what people were willing to pay. And I did look online, but because we're hyper localized, it's we had to build it differently than I think a traditional podcast would sell it. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Yeah, no, that's great, that is great, and the other question I was gonna ask, so I'm stealing anyone else's question maybe, but. Is ads the only way you make money with this podcast, or have you?
no,
No.
we made merch.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
there's merch there, you can put ads on your website, like Google Ads, it's a very powerful ads platform, if you wanna. Throw ads on your website, you're not gonna make a whole lot. You know, it's all based on your website traffic and page views
And not that it's like money per se, but I guess it's more like contra, like when we did our event, we had prize sponsors and they gave us things to give away, and then we just gave them shout outs on socials. So you're getting like a product for what you're doing, which is a bit different, but worked really well because then you're inviting people to an event.
That, and like with our sponsors specifically, like once their month is up, like I still talk about Family Dental Center and how
Yeah.
much I love them.
The other thing to push with podcasts, which I always tell a new sponsor, is that's in there forever. It's not like we take it out once your ad's up. So, you know, Family Dental Center is always going to be in like episode 19 to 20, and their links are always going to be in the show notes. So even once I'll give them analytics at the end, be like, this is how many downloads you got. But those downloads are going to keep going up, and it's always going to be there. So it is kind of nice that, you know, radio, once it's up and you apply, but yeah, so.
Yeah, but yeah, it's more a permanent sponsorship, but we call them partnerships because realistically. I want to partner with brands and I want to be like an equally beneficial relationship.
What have we learned from my favorite lesbian, Miss Frizzle? take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. We took a chance, two bald men did not really believe in us, but they let us do it.
I just don't think they understood
What we were
what
doing.
we were doing, and now they kind of see that things
Kind of
are,
get it.
they're like, oh, okay, like this is
Yeah.
a thing, and I'm like, that's a thing, now we can make more.
Yeah, so we made mistakes, there's audio I can't listen to because it's just a little cringy to me, we get messy, we talk about weird things on the podcast. So,
Yeah, like we'll lose audio sometimes.
Yeah.
Like we recorded a whole episode on Zoom or on Riverside with Stony Lonesome,
didn't work.
and we go after to download it all. One audio and video gone.
And then, you know, you have to go back and be like, hey,
Hey,
we need
guys.
you for another hour.
Hey guys, and it's like, you know, sometimes you have to corral like, you know, 5 different people with like different schedules, different timing, you know, have other work commitments, and we're also not paying them.
Yeah,
But that's another thing too that you can do.
yeah, you could pay us, yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking for like a very specific expert. Like one of my friends, her name's Bren. And she runs Beer Diversity, so she hypes up just like kind of like minority owned breweries. And she was on City TV. I'm like, I really want to get her as a guest, but I'm just like, I know I'm gonna pay her. Because she's like one of those people that it's just like, she's gonna open things, so anyways.
Believe in what you're talking about. We believe in ourselves, I guess, so
A little bit too much and also not.
not enough, yeah, also a lot of stuff though. Know your value, this is something like I've struggled with through this whole process, because I don't really believe we're doing anything that great. But people seem to like it and enjoy what we're doing, and then we had to, when we started selling it, we really had to believe like we're creating a product people want to be a part of. Which I have we have inner saboteurs that like will hate talks to us, but
If you can present it to a sponsor or a boss or anybody, if we can do it, like, do it, like.
if we can convince our managers that this was somewhat a good idea, you can do anything, because they are very scary bald men.
Learn to say no. Sometimes things will not align with your brand, but the money will be very good. Sometimes you have to say no.
We haven't really had to yet, which is good.
No, we haven't had to, or like even, it doesn't even have to be with, you know, with sponsorships, it could be like, no, I'm not going on Twitter,
Yeah.
I'm not
we're not
doing
out
it,
there.
like, there's so much.
Or you may just be at your capacity, like we do this on top of our job, so sometimes we just have to like say no, yeah.
You know, sometimes we're gonna, you know, put an episode out a day late, because.
Yeah, that goes with make your own rules. We started putting episodes out on Monday. Mondays are so busy for us. So we moved it to Wednesday, but sometimes, you know, we're super busy and then I get the episode out Thursday, or we were both sick one week and I couldn't look at my computer to edit, so it came out. We
The following
missed an
week.
episode.
I'm going on vacation,
I'm still getting episodes out though.
And
don't
I'm-
listen to her.
we don't make the rules, but I'm just like, hey, we can take a 2-week break.
But we're
And-
not.
But we're not.
Don't worry.
because-
Cause I'm busy.
And I'm trying to enforce rules,
Yeah.
but you know.
It's not happening. Any more questions? Yeah.
So I have a question. So I get branding, that's kind of what I do, but I guess my question is, we already have a pre-existing business. And the idea was to kind of feed the podcast from that business. So you're really talking about branding a podcast independently. And I use like all my existing Instagram and all of that and just like feed it in rather than recreating a whole
Oh, yeah,
separate.
no, for sure.
That's what the marketing, if you look at like the 95.5 Hits FM, Instagram, that's where all the Mark and Charity podcast goes. And it has the 95.5 Hits FM logo on it, so that podcast was
Is
branded.
branded specifically
Okay.
for
So
that
I'll-
brand.
I'll check out.
So if you have, yeah, so if you have an existing brand, you can just start integrating like audio content. Into
Right,
your brand.
and use our existing website, our existing
Absolutely,
Instagram,
yes,
all of that, as
yes.
opposed to trying.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah,
and then you can put, like, say your podcast has a different name, you can put that logo on and your business logo and.
Yeah,
brand
and
them,
brand
like,
them
make a
together.
cohesive brand out of it.
Perfect.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Cause you're already gonna be hitting your current audience and be like, hey, look what I'm so doing.
Also, then, yeah, you already have an audience from the
Yeah.
Instagram you already built, right?
The monetization's gonna be great for
We
you.
love that, yeah. Back there.
What is your like weekly time commitment / how far in advance do you guys schedule this?
So originally, we were not good at scheduling, we were like going through
Oh,
our
time
office
management's
being
not
like,
my forte.
hey, we don't have guests this week, come upstairs and talk to us. So we record for an hour each week. We record our episode with our guests a week before. That gives us a week to edit. I'm really bad now and I edit as I'm doing other things. So I probably on an episode that's like clean, I don't have to edit that much. I just listen to it through. So like an hour, hour and a half, and then it probably takes me about 30 minutes to get it up, and then she does the social.
Social stuff, yeah, so probably another half an hour to an hour to build out the creative for socials and uploading and putting it on the website.
Say 4 to 5 hours a week.
And that includes like getting all your analyticals and doing your advertising and,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it was like, I guess maybe 6 hours when we have to start producing an
An
ad and
actual
stuff.
ad, yeah. You have to
Um,
get client approval,
but one thing we started using like Calendly, I always say it right?
yeah.
Because originally we were like reaching out to guests, trying to find time, so now I'm just like, here's our Calendly, here's when we record. We also, one thing we have to do is because podcasting comes second in the radio world. We have to like schedule around when they're in the studios. I think we drive Paul Ferguson nuts, because I'm always like, come in. And so that also, we have to like time it out properly. If you don't have guests, it's a lot easier, I think, because it's just,
Oh, for
it's
sure.
your time. And our episodes are longer, so people need to be able to come in for an hour, hour and a half. And Jenny, you were in there for like 2 hours. Yeah, but like Jenny, how long did you spend on your podcast each one?
Mine's like 10 minutes max.
Yeah. It just depends how long it is and how we were originally gonna do every other week, then we got really excited in the beginning.
And then we decided we do mini episodes.
We scratched that.
We scratched that real quick.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like one of those things that you make the rules.
Yeah, we're learning as we go, because we were putting like maybe too much time in it.
Oh, yeah. for
And in the
sure.
beginning, because we originally had someone who was gonna do the editing and producing for us, but they were taking their sweet time, and I'm really bad at being patient. So in the beginning, it took me longer to edit when I was learning how to use it, but now I just like have it playing, and if I hear a sound I don't like, I'll just edit it out. Yes.
Do you do all of yours like face to face in the same room? Is it possible to do distance podcasts, like where you're
Yeah.
chatting with people?
Yeah,
wherever, as
so
long as
that's
they invite?
like Jenny does hers through Riverside, so when she,
Use Zoom,
yeah, Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom.
but Riverside has better video, we always use the content for Instagram,
Yeah.
so that's why.
So the person far away is also on the Riverside.
Yeah.
And they're just the same as Zoom.
Okay.
The good thing about Riverside too is the audio is cleaner. Zoom, I would say you would have to get, if you wanted better audio quality, I would get a mixing board, because you can't record Zoom right into like an audio recording on your computer. You need like another pathway in. That makes sense.
I use one called Zencaster. It's similar to Riverside, but I found with Riverside, might happen with you guys with Stony Lonesome, but it had multiple guests. The audio didn't work for 2 of our guests.
Yeah,
And then did it, Zencast, you can have a lot, but it watermarks the video that you explored in the podcast as well, like at the start of the podcast. Says, hey, welcome to Zencaster,
Yeah.
and then it starts. So,
and it all,
Riverside is what I use. Is it my one? No.
no, so yeah, if you were just gonna have like one other guest or 2, I feel like Riverside is good, but I feel like it just becomes an issue when,
You have
You
multiple
have
guests
multiple
and
It's the internet,
internet.
yeah.
capability.
Yeah. I forgot to say it, but free audio recording and editing software, there's one popular one called Audacity. That seems to be one people are using. Reaper is another good one, but you can just look up free Adobe Audition alternative, and there's a fair number there. Anyone else? Yeah.
so you guys at the start said, podcast listens are growing, podcasts are growing, but I feel like so many people are doing podcasts now, like. How do you, and I know you had the niche thing there, like find a style. What do you do to get out there initially and try and grow those?
So it's a lot of network.
Yeah, networking, put yourself out there.
Also, one
Go
thing
to
about
events, meet people.
One thing about our podcast is we're a hyper local podcast, like same Jenny, you interview people really in the area. And that seems to be growing in the podcast world. So, we're not trying to be all over Canada. We're literally just trying to grow within our community, and that seems to be rising in the podcast world. So that really worked for us, and that seems to be how we're going the fast, because we can go to networking events. Our name kind of goes with where we are, and like that's how we met
That's how
Brianna.
I
and
met these guys.
That's how I met Jenny, so it's just getting out there, and then
Did you guys pay for any ads like on social media or anything at the start, or you just let your network, you went
Yeah,
to
I
events and
think
spread?
building actual relationships with people is just more valuable to me.
Yeah.
And I find that way, you know, once people get to know us and, you know, we're not always like crazy and chaotic, like, you know, we want to, you know, support other businesses, and especially with like the monetization stuff, it's like, we don't wanna just like, you know, just take money and like,
another trend too is when we have guests on that already have like a very large social media following. Those all of a sudden, once those episodes go, they get so many downloads, like they get more downloads, and then our Instagram like goes up because, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So like Flossie's was like them and Kate Shaw from the County Emporium, like she was in the beginning, and like that, I think got us out there a little bit more, yeah.
yeah, leverage us, yeah.
There's something I kind of want to add to that too, is when I met the two of you, I really enjoyed your personality, the way that you chatted with me, and that made me want to be interested in what you guys had to say. So
Thank you.
to want to actually want to listen to you. Well, really, that's what it comes down to, because it's that
Yeah.
people connection. Okay, well, I really like listening to them. Well, I'm just gonna check out their podcast. And you guys said, you know, you're unqualified babes, talking to
That
qualified
is like
people.
our, that's our check.
And
that's
that's
something that might be phasing out. It was growing your brand, you know, what I mean? It's like,
definitely.
you know, when we started, we were tagging ourselves as unqualified babes, speaking to qualified people in the Bay of Quinte, which at the beginning is kind of fun, but it's like,
Now, not so much.
Not, we're like, oh wait, we're kind of.
I literally have a degree in marketing,
Yeah.
so it's like, I am totally qualified for this.
Yeah, I practiced this presentation to my mom and girlfriend last night, and they were like, hey, she don't know what she's doing, so it's shocking everyone. Yeah.
But that's what it was. It was the
Yeah.
connection. That's what made me want to listen to them. Just even having that meeting we chatted for what, 10 minutes maybe?
Yeah,
And that was it. And that was kind of my interest, to spark my interest to listen to them. So definitely making the connections. I will 100% vouch for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, my question is actually about Brianna's comment. So I created a podcast. I only recorded, I think, 6 to 8 episodes. I'm an academic, so it was an academic podcast. We were talking with other professors about their research, and they are so boring. So at the end of the day, no one listened to it, and they talk for hours and hours. So first of all, how can you manage your brand's persona when you interview another person? Like if they're boring or if they're not as fun as you,
Yeah.
what do you do? And also, like, how do you manage the other person when you're doing podcast?
that's been a learning curve interviewing people.
cause sometimes like the way we do it, like ideally, it's kind of just like a conversation. And it kind of just like flows naturally. But sometimes like we'll have guests that are just like a little bit more formal. So what I don't know, I just kind of let people talk and try to steer it a little bit, but I think that comes also with choosing your guests and knowing that, you know, if, you know, choosing guests that kind of reflect your energy. So like, yeah,
We definitely have guests that are very much match our energy, that lady in the back, or we've had people like older guests who are a little more reserved, and then I find I match their energy. We always have, and I'm sure you had this, like we have questions written out, but you know, we had a guest who like I was struggling to like rope them back to where we were trying to talk about, and I had to get good at like interjecting into people's and we'll go on tangents, and then like for us, we'll be able to be like, okay, back on track, or you can be like circling back.
Yeah.
Academic podcasts are definitely, I think it would be how you would market it too, like.
Yeah.
You may have to do some like social media marketing that targets like other academics just to get it out there.
Maybe you just lean into it, call it the boring podcast.
Yeah.
and-
that's awesome.
that's the thing, that's, there's no wrong way really to do it.
No,
Well, when it comes to creating content.
yeah,
It's
Question about the room, how big a room where you do your podcast can it be like a bedroom?
Oh, yeah, the smaller the better.
Smaller?
You can also go on YouTube and look up soundproofing techniques, like towels will soundproof the room. The more furniture that's in the room, the better, because all of that is just gonna decrease the amount of echo you get. So we're fortunate because, you know, we have soundproof studios. But like, I know some podcasters, they'll like go into, again, a closet or their car, like just something small, and you can build like you can get soundproofing for pretty cheap at like Home Depot. It's not beautiful, but there's ways to just pad up a room.
Yeah, we have, in the Quinty office that initially started in the basement of the company. There's a small kind of room and it has these panels on it that are, I guess, sound insulated.
Yeah.
And they're really pretty, so like you can get like super pretty ones, that look kind of like.
Or you can just get like, it's like foam, like a black foam.
I've seen.
And
Yeah.
you just like cover them with a canvas, like an art print or something, to make it just like look a little bit prettier.
That was what our goal is to get like a podcasting studio, because then we don't have to, they're putting us in the same office, which I'm pretty excited about,
Just in
but
the hallway.
I'm in the hallway right now. But the goal is to turn that into a podcast studio, so we'll just put different soundproofing that is prettier up in there. You can build like a frame and stuff it with towels, and then like put a towel on the outside and hang it, or like put fabric on the outside, and that's just gonna muffle that extra sound.
I was thinking of what you said about the closet.
Yeah.
It has clothes, yeah.
Yeah, it has, like, if you have like a more walk-in closet, that like that would be perfect, because you can set the clothes are already gonna muffle that
So-
extra sound.
With that, my ex-partner, was signed to this band with Sony. And they literally recorded their whole last album in his closet. Like, so they were literally sitting in a closet with like towels down the front of the door. And they recorded a professional marketed across Canada album in a closet nominated for a Juno. So, you know, it's possible, you just have to kind of
And
get a little
YouTube,
bit creative with it.
YouTube is your best friend.
Oh,
You can, that's how I learned to edit, that you can learn to soundproof on YouTube. You can learn so many things. You don't have to go to school. That's what I went into.
And if you really need a space, there's a space here that you can use as well. That we're supposed to market, which we haven't done yet.
We have a media room, so
Wow.
we do have some Yeti mics.
Yeah.
And
Well, look at you guys go, you're all set.
And
Yeah.
we
Let's
just
start
have,
the
we just,
podcast.
Haven't done it yet.
and it has a cost to it, right?
No, I
no,
don't
it
think
is
so.
absolutely free,
Wow.
so you can book that through me. Yeah.
It's in our to-do list to.
And then when you launch your podcast, we can post about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another thing also that I thought was really important is like when we have past guests, when they succeed, we share it to our kids.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You know, so you're kind of like building a community with your podcast.
Yeah.
I'll
And that's
also
what-
add Chantel's contact information, so if you wish to rent it the space,
Well, and-
or I guess use the space.
Yeah,
But
and
you
maybe
have to
even,
book it.
even on your way out, we can show you.
Yeah, we
the
can open
room.
up the room and show
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah.
That's
Very cool,
right? Yeah, that's one just question.
Yeah.
About the use of headphones,
Yes.
Yes.
how important is that? Like
It's
you-
not, like, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
If you're doing an interview podcast, sometimes it helps, especially if you're using a mic on like the feedback and what it's picking up. If you're doing just like a basic monologue podcast, you don't need it. I just listen to like sound, you can hear more sound within your headphones, so. I can pick up more sounds I wanna edit out. with the headphones, and when we're recording, I'll just have like one headphone on just to make sure our levels all sound okay, but you don't have to do it.
Okay. That's.
If you guys have any other questions, I will give you their contact information.
Yeah,
As long as you're okay with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, of course.
So if you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to them. And if I could give you guys one piece of advice, listen to the podcast. It's awesome.
Also, can I
And-
get a sticker? I have more stickers.
And I'm really disappointed. I've been waiting for it. There's no, that's amazing.
Wow. You ready? That's what we do at the animal art.
You have to do the.
Okay, that's what I. That was amazing.
I mean, no, it's like silly, but
I was like, okay, I'm like, oh, I saw, it's not.
I know one ever told us it's thing, because it's always been just kind of like.
I say it with you.
I think Brianna just did this literally just for her.
It's just like, that's one. To be honest, I kind of listened to them a little bit. I follow them on social media and I don't even think I listened to their first podcast before I even asked them to come out. I will be honest. And then once I booked the workshop, I was like, you know what? I should really listen to their podcast. And I can literally hear your growth within it.
Yeah.
And you sound happier, you do.
Yeah, you don't sound like you're.
I think I'm past Jamie's episode.
Oh, it's fine.
I really, I didn't try to promote them, I became in love with them in a way.
And now we're gonna hype you up too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. You know, like, it's just, we're all the good vibes, right?
Yeah.
So, that's who we are, so.
So, yeah, so everyone, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
If anyone wants to see the media room, I will be going down there right now.
I'll check it out.